On the day Sonia was traded, she didn't carry a bride's pride, she carried a borrowed bag with 3 dresses and a father's debt. She was exchanged for 3 months of unpaid labor to a man whose only possession was the calluses on his hands. The story opens in the red dust of Kolda village, at the moment Chief Desmond points at his daughter and settles his account. Sonia stands in the compound yard where she has swept and built and cooked since childhood, watching herself become currency. Mama Mary's laughter follows her down the road as she walks away beside a man she has never spoken to. The intro establishes Sonia's fatal flaw, learned worthlessness. She has been discarded so completely by the people who were supposed to cherish her that she has mistaken her father's contempt for her actual value. John had worked Chief Desmond's farm for 3 months without a single coin. He'd asked twice, politely, and been told to wait. On the 3rd asking, he arrived at the compound gate at dawn before the chief had finished his palm wine, and this time he didn't ask. He stood in the yard with his hat in his hands and said, simply, that he would not leave without what he was owed. Chief Desmond looked at this quiet man, his worn boots, his clean but threadbare kaftan, his hands that told the whole story of his life, and saw an opportunity dressed as an obligation. He laughed the way powerful men laugh at inconvenient debts, expansively, as if the whole situation were a joke everyone was in on. You want payment? He spread his arms wide, theatrical, performing for the 2 women watching from the doorway. I give you payment. He turned and pointed at Sonia. She was standing by the water drum in her work clothes, hair tied back, a bucket in her hands. She'd heard her name in her father's voice 1,000 times, and she knew every register of it, the contempt, the command, the dismissal. This tone was new. This tone was something she didn't have a name for yet because she'd never been sold before. 3 months of work, Chief Desmond said, settled by one wife. You're getting the better end of this bargain, I promise you. The women in the doorway, her stepmother Rosa and her stepsister Binta, exchanged glances that contained everything, satisfaction, relief, and the particular cruelty of people who have wanted someone gone for a long time and finally found a clean way to accomplish it. John looked at Sonia for a long moment. She looked back, her chin up, her face arranged into the expression she'd spent 22 years perfecting, the blank armor of a woman who has learned that showing pain only invites more of it. Does she agree? John asked. The question surprised everyone, including Sonia. Chief Desmond blinked. It had not occurred to him that agreement was a relevant variable. She agrees, he said. John turned to Sonia directly. Do you? She looked at her father, at his compound, at the life she had been living here that was no life at all. She looked at John's worn boots and his steady eyes, and she made the only calculation available to her. Yes, she said. I agree. They left before the sun reached its height. Sonia went inside to pack, and the packing took 7 minutes because there was so little work taking: 3 dresses, a Bible with a cracked spine, her mother's photograph that she'd hidden in the lining of her bag for years, and a small notebook where she'd written down words she'd collected from books she'd borrowed and returned and wished she could keep. Rosa stood in the doorway watching with her arms crossed and a smile she didn't bother to conceal. Don't come back expecting anything, she said. You're someone else's problem now. Sonia said nothing. She had learned early that responding to Rosa was like pouring water into sand. It disappeared without trace and only made the ground harder. Binta, to her credit, looked away. The walk to the road that would take them to the city bus was 4 kilometers through the village's main street, and Mama Mary made sure to be positioned at her usual spot in front of her fabric stall when they passed. The old woman had a gift for being present at the exact moment most useful for gossip, and she'd already heard the news, probably from Rosa, who had probably called her before Sonia had finished packing. Sonia. Mama Mary called out, her voice carrying the length of the market. Is it true? He traded you for 3 months of groundnut work. She pressed her hand to her chest, performing shock that was really delight. God have mercy. A chief's daughter, given to a laborer for less than 1 season's wages. Several heads turned. Several conversations paused. The village was watching. Sonia kept walking. Her borrowed bag sat heavy on her head, and her face was arranged into its armor, and the only thing she allowed herself to feel in that moment was the sensation of each footstep taking her father from that stall and that woman and that place. Holes in his shoes. Mama Mary called after them. You check those shoes, Sonia, the man has holes in his shoes. John, walking beside her, said nothing. He didn't quicken his pace or look back. He simply walked, with his worn boots and his quiet dignity, until the sound of Mama Mary's voice became the sound of distance and then the sound of nothing. After a while, he said, "Are you cold?" "No," she said. "Tell me if you get tired." She didn't answer. But something in the simplicity of the question, its complete indifference to what had just happened, its focus only on her present condition, made something in her chest crack, very slightly, like the first line forming in ice before it gives way. The estate appeared without warning. They'd been on a red dirt road that offered no indication of destination for so long that Sonia had stopped looking ahead, conserving herself, preparing for whatever version of hardship waited at the end. And then the road turned, the tree stained, and there it was, the compound so large it had its own horizon. The main house stood behind tall iron gates, 3 stories of pale stone with windows like watching eyes. Bougainvillea climbed the outer walls in rivers of pink and orange. Even from the road, Sonia could see a garden and a generator building and a water tower with the kind of permanence that means it has always been there and intends to remain. She stopped walking. "This is where you work?" she asked. "This is where we live," John said. He nodded toward a smaller structure set apart from the main house, a guest house, solid and clean, with its own small yard. Small compared to the main house, which was to say small compared to a palace. Larger than anything Sonia had slept in since her mother died. He opened the door and let her in first. The room was simple. A bed with a real mattress, covered with a plain but clean wrapper. A window with a curtain. A table and 2 chairs. A small kitchen with gas, not firewood. A bathroom with a door that closed. A door that closed. Sonia stood in the bathroom doorway for a moment, processing this specific luxury, the privacy of it, the idea that she could occupy a space that no one could enter without her permission. She came back to the main room. John had set her bag by the bed, carefully, as if it contained something worth being careful with. "You sleep here," he said. "I'll take the chair until you're comfortable." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." He moved to the small kitchen. "Are you hungry?" This was the first time Sonia understood that something was different about this man. Not his shoes, which were worn, or his clothes, which were simple. But the way he spoke, without entitlement, without assumption, with a directness that had no cruelty in it. She had grown up around men who spoke in commands and debts. This was something else entirely. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm hungry." "Then sit," he said. "I'll cook." No man had ever cooked for Sonia before. This is not a metaphor or an exaggeration, it is simply true. From the time she was old enough to stand at a fire, cooking had been her work and her duty and her mother's work before her. Her father ate first and best and without acknowledgement. Her stepmother cooked only to eat herself, never for Sonia. The kitchen had always been a place of labor, not care. John moved around the small kitchen with the quiet efficiency of a man who had fed himself alone for a long time. He found rice and onions and a tin of tomatoes, and he worked without asking for her help or commenting on her presence, only occasionally glancing up to check that she was still sitting, still breathing. The food smelled real. Not the barely seasoned, quickly assembled food of people who cooked because they had to. This smelled like something made with attention. When he set the plate in front of her, she looked at it, then at him. "Eat while it's hot," he said, sitting across from her with his own plate, already eating without theater or ceremony. She picked up the spoon and took the first mouthful. The rice was well cooked, the sauce careful. She ate slowly, waiting for the catch, the moment when this unfamiliar kindness would reveal itself as something else, something with a cost attached. That was how she'd learned generosity worked, something given, then something demanded. But John just ate. When his plate was empty, he washed it. When she finished, he washed hers too. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know." He dried his hands and turned to face her. "My name is John Komara. I know your father told you this, but he told you many things today that were said without care, and I don't want to be introduced to you the same way. I'm John. What do you want me to call you?" "Sonia." "Sonia." He tried it, the way people try a word they want to remember. "What do you need tonight, Sonia, to sleep safely?" The question undid her in a way she wasn't prepared for. She had not been asked what she needed in so long that she had almost stopped knowing how to answer. She pressed her lips together and looked at the table. "Just the room," she managed. "Just the door that closes." "Then that's what you have," he said simply, and he went to sit in the chair and left her the bed, and he kept his word all night. If you've ever been treated with unexpected kindness by a stranger when the people who were supposed to protect you failed, this story is for you. Stay with us. 3 weeks into their life on the estate, Sonia found John's bookshelf. It was modest, a wooden shelf beside the kitchen table holding perhaps 30 books, a mix of agricultural manuals, 2 novels, and several textbooks that she recognized from the secondary school she'd attended briefly before her father pulled her out to work the farm. She was running her fingers along the spines when John came in and found her. She pulled her hand back immediately, as if she'd been caught stealing. "You can take any of them," he said. "I was just looking." "I know. Take one if you want." She hesitated, then reached for a biology textbook, the same edition she'd used in school, worn and annotated by previous hands. She held it the way some people hold objects they thought they'd lost forever. "Did you study science?" he asked. The question opened a door she'd been keeping closed for years. "I wanted to. I wanted to go to university. Study medicine." She set the book down on the table, not trusting herself to say more. "My father needed the labor more than he needed a doctor in the family." John sat down. He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that means someone is thinking before speaking. "How old are you?" 22. "Medical school takes 6 years. You could finish by 28, 29. She stared at him. "I have no money. No qualifications. I didn't even complete secondary school." "You could complete it." He said it the way people state facts about weather, simply, without drama. "There are adult education programs. I know someone who runs one in town. You could prepare for the exams, then apply." "Why would you?" She stopped. "What do you want in return?" He looked at her steadily. "I want you to stop asking that question," he said. "Not every offer has a hidden cost. Some things are just offered. You're allowed to receive them." She'd been told this with words before, by church people, by teachers briefly, but she'd never experienced it as a sustained truth in her own life. She looked at him, this man with his worn shoes and his steady eyes, and felt the particular vertigo of someone whose entire framework of the world is being quietly dismantled. "I'll think about it," she said. But she took the biology textbook to bed that night and read until the generator cut off the lights, and when she slept, she dreamed something she hadn't dreamed in years, not fear, but the future. Karim appeared in their lives on a Tuesday, arriving at the estate in a car that cost more than some villages. He was maybe 25, well-dressed in the way that announces wealth before the person speaks, and he looked at everything with the ownership of someone who had never been told anything was off limits. He found Sonia in the garden where she'd been weeding, one of the small tasks she'd taken on without being asked because stillness still felt dangerous to her, because her hands still needed work to trust that a day would end without punishment. "So you're John's wife," he said, looking at her with the frank appraisal of a man who's decided the usual rules don't apply. "Yes," she said, standing, brushing soil from her hands. "Interesting." He smiled, and the smile was handsome and completely untrustworthy. "You're much prettier than I expected, given the circumstances." "The circumstances?" "The trade." He shrugged, as if her origin story was a minor inconvenience. "Listen, I have a proposition. There's a scholarship. Overseas university. Nursing, medicine, whatever you want. I have connections, real connections, not the kind of promises people make to make themselves feel generous." He paused, watching her reaction. "All I'd need is for you to spend some time with me. Show me around the city. Be available." The offer was elegant in its obscenity. Dressed in the language of opportunity, stripped of dignity by implication. He was offering her everything she'd confessed to wanting, wrapped in everything she'd been trained to survive. "I'm married," she said. "To a security guard." He said it lightly, as if correcting a minor factual error. "A man with holes in his shoes who will never give you anything bigger than this garden." He gestured at the estate around them. "You deserve more. I could give you more." Sonia looked at him for a long, measured moment. Then she picked up her gardening tool and returned to the weeding. "I'm busy," she said. Karim left, but the smile he wore on the way out was not the smile of a man who had been defeated. It was the smile of someone who was only getting started. Karim came back 4 more times over the following 2 weeks. Each time, his approach shifted, first flattery, then gifts left by the kitchen door, then a long philosophical conversation in the yard about ambition and wasted potential that was designed to sound like wisdom but was actually pressure dressed in a suit. Each time, Sonia declined. Not dramatically, not with speeches. Simply, with the quiet finality of a woman who had decided something and was not available for renegotiation. On the 5th visit, something changed. Karim's casualness hardened into something else. He sat across from her at the garden table and folded his hands and spoke in a different register, measured, cold, the voice of consequence. "John's employment here depends on the property owner's goodwill," he said. "I have significant influence over that goodwill. I'd hate for him to lose his position because of misunderstandings." Sonia set down her cup. "Are you threatening my husband's job?" "I'm explaining a situation." He spread his hands, reasonable, calm. "You could have a scholarship, a future, a life. All I'm asking for is your time. Meanwhile, John keeps his work, keeps his house, keeps everything. Everyone benefits." The offer was the same as before. The threat was new. Sonia sat with it for a moment, feeling the full weight of what she stood to lose, the room with the closing door, the cooking that had no price, the biology textbook and the dream of medicine that had started to feel possible rather than imaginary. She thought about what she told herself since arriving here, that this kindness would eventually come with a cost. That nothing was ever simply given. It seemed she'd been wrong about John, but entirely right about the world. She stood. "Then he loses the job," she said. Her voice was steady in a way that surprised even her. "And we live. And we sleep in the street if we have to. But I won't betray the one person who has treated me like I was worth something just because you've decided I should be for sale." She looked at him with 22 years of being undervalued finally converting into something else. "I was traded once. I won't be traded again. Not for scholarships. Not for anything." She walked back to the house. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them at her sides, and she did not look back, and when she closed the door behind her it was with the particular dignity of someone who has finally, irrevocably, chosen themselves. John was waiting inside. He'd heard. The garden wasn't large, and the afternoon was quiet, and there are some conversations that carry because they are meant to. He sat at the kitchen table with his hands folded, and when Sonia came in, he looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen before. "Sit down," he said. "Please." She sat. Her heart was still hammering from the confrontation, from the violence of the choice she'd just made in full view of everything she wanted. "I need to tell you something," John said. "I should have told you sooner, and I'm sorry that I didn't. What I'm going to say will change things, and I want you to know that everything that happened before this moment was real. Everything." Behind him, the door opened. Madame Komora, the elegant older woman Sonia had seen coming and going from the main house, whom she'd understood to be John's employer, walked in and sat at the table. Behind her came Karim, and he was no longer wearing the smile of a predator. He was wearing the sheepish expression of a younger brother who had overplayed his role. "Madame Komora is my mother," John said. "This is her estate. Which means it's my estate. Which means it will, eventually, be ours." Sonia stared at him. "The security guard position, the small house, the worn shoes," he paused. "I've been deceived by women who loved my money more than they could ever love me. 3 times. After the 3rd time, I decided the next woman I asked to share my life would have to choose me when I had nothing. Only then would I know the choice was real." Karim leaned forward. "The scholarship offer was the final test. I'm sorry it was unpleasant. You passed." Sonia sat very still, processing, feeling the room shift around her like a landscape rearranging itself into a different picture that had been there all along. "The holes in your shoes," she said finally. John almost smiled. "Deliberate. Mama Mary doesn't know anything." His voice gentled. "Sonia, I'm the same man who cooked your first meal. The same man who left you the bed. Nothing about who I am has changed. Only what I own." She looked at his mother, who was watching her with an expression of quiet assessment that had now softened into something warmer. Then she looked at her husband, this man she'd chosen when he had nothing to offer but dignity, and felt the specific, enormous weight of a life opening. News travels from city compounds back to village markets through channels that have operated since before telecommunications, and it took exactly 11 days for word of John Komora's true identity to reach Kolda. It arrived in the form of a photograph that Madame Komora had casually posted on her family's social page, a family gathering, formal, in the main house, with Sonia sitting in silk beside John in a suit that fit properly. Chief Desmond saw it at Mama Mary's fabric store. Mama Mary had called him specifically, because of course she had. He called Sonia that evening. The number showed up on a phone that John had bought her, and she looked at it for a long time before answering. "Sonia." Her father's voice was different. The contempt had been replaced by something she recognized immediately because it was the same thing he used with people whose favor he needed, warmth on the surface, calculation underneath. "My daughter. I've been thinking about you. Wondering how you're settling." "I'm well," she said. Flat. Offering nothing. "I hear you're living well." A pause that contained everything he wasn't saying directly. "I always knew you'd land on your feet. You have your mother's strength." He'd never said her mother's name without cruelty before. "Things are a little difficult here, you know. The farm had a bad season. Your stepmother's health. Papa." She kept her voice even. "I know why you're calling." A longer pause. "I just wanted to hear your voice." "Is that so wrong? A father calling his daughter. You traded me for 3 months of wages. You didn't ask if I agreed until someone else made you. You watched Mama Mary mock me at the market and said nothing." She wasn't angry. Anger would have required more energy than this deserved. She was simply stating facts with the clarity of a woman who had stopped carrying other people's stories about her. "I won't be sending money to Kolda. Not to you. If Binta ever needs anything, she can call me herself. She ended the call. John was in the doorway. She hadn't known he was listening, and she braced herself, uncertain if she'd done something that needed justifying. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said. And she was. Completely, newly, honestly. "I actually am. 6 years is a long time and no time at all. It passes the way good years do, in seasons of study and argument and laughter and the ordinary difficulties of becoming, the kind that sharpen you rather than diminish you. The adult education program. The qualifying exams. The university application that came back accepted with a scholarship, a real one, arranged by no one with ulterior motives, and by the woman who had spent her nights with a cracked-spine biology textbook in a guest house with a door that closed. Medical school is its own form of survival. Sonia survived it the way she'd survived everything, by paying attention, by working until the work became second nature, by refusing to believe that the space she occupied was smaller than it actually was. John sat in the front row on graduation day. This was non-negotiable. He told her so months in advance and had arranged his schedule around it with the focused single-mindedness of a man attending the most important event of his life. He wore a proper suit, he owned many now, though he still had the worn boot somewhere, kept as a reminder of something he didn't want to forget. Madame Komora sat beside him, her handkerchief already deployed. Karim was there too, genuinely proud in the way younger brothers become when they've witnessed something that deserves pride. When Sonia's name was called, she walked across the stage in a gown that cost more than all 3 dresses in her borrowed bag combined, and received her degree with both hands, and looked out at the audience for exactly one face. John was on his feet before she reached her seat. From the village of Kolda, Mama Mary watched the video someone sent her, the graduation, the mansion, the announcement that followed of a first child expected in 7 months. She watched it 3 times, her expression cycling through disbelief and calculation and something that, in someone with more self-awareness, might have become a lesson. Binta called Sonia that evening. Not for money, just to say she was proud, that she had watched the video, that she hoped someday to visit. Sonia said she was welcome anytime. Chief Desmond didn't call. What could he have said? In the city, in a house with more rooms than a village, Sonia sat beside her husband with her degree on the table between them and her future in the only place it had ever been safe, inside herself, where no one could trade it away. The people who mock what they cannot see have this in common with the people who only recognize diamonds after someone else has polished them. They are always, without exception, too late. Some diamonds are found in dust. And some debts, when settled, become the beginning of everything the creditor never imagined was possible.